So now, so now I'd like to turn this over to our moderator, Emily Janney. She is the marketing manager for our gold partner, Turner Construction. Emily.
Thank you so much, Donna. This is such an incredible opportunity. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, the virtual stage is now yours. I am going to jump off.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. First, I'd just like to take a moment and say that I think BC&E is a great organization. Events like this are just the tip of the iceberg. BC&E can help you connect with industry leaders, promote your business, exchange ideas, and learn new things like we're doing this morning. I'll give my panelists a chance to turn on their cameras and introduce themselves. And maybe as a bonus, you all can tell us a little bit about what you love about BC&E. Dan, why don't you take it away?
All righty. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dan. I'm co-founder of the Alisana Collective. We are a media production company based out of Baltimore. Proud member of BC&E for the past 2+ years. Love the environment, love the people. So thank you for doing stuff like this and including companies like mine in this process. In terms of AEC, we've been filming and producing media in this field since our inception. We have partners such as Hit Contracting, Chesapeake, GHT, Anchor Mechanical, Carter Machinery. Really, I share that because we love filming in this space and creating in this space. There's something that this world does different than a lot of other worlds in terms of what they create, what they design, what they're able to show off at really a grand scale. So it's fun for us to help tell those stories. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Jen, do you want to jump in next?
Sure. My name is Jen Dodson with the Dashmore Creative. We're a fractional CMO firm specializing in B2B construction and manufacturing. I recently joined BC&E for the relationships. Everyone feels really genuine and it's good conversation, not a lot of smoke and mirrors and fake personalities, which is refreshing. Taylor?
Hello, I'm Taylor. I'm the director of marketing at Duckpin. Duckpin's a full-service digital marketing and advertising agency. We specialize in website development, branding, and design. Duckpin's been connected with BC&E for many years. We were connected with Marianne Crampton with MK Consulting and rebuilt and redesigned their website around their 10-year anniversary, which went on to win an AMA MX award. We've worked with other BC&E members as well, including Oak Construction, to rebuild their site around 6 months during last year. And our goal when working with a client is to ensure their digital presence showcases their work to then drive meaningful business growth.
Great. Thank you, Taylor. I know everyone's eager to get going, so let's jump right in. Jennifer, I'm going to turn to you. Let's start with the basics, the fundamentals. Why is marketing essential for construction firms?
So a lot of construction companies are very similar. The services they offer are comparable, and marketing is how you're going to help differentiate yourself from your direct competitors. If there's 2 site construction companies, what makes one more unique than another? And there are team members and aspects that add value, but ultimately the visuals and the messaging and everything else that goes into the perception of that brand comes down to marketing. And the more you can have a memorable experience and visuals for people, the stronger you're going to differentiate yourself in the market.
Great. Taylor, same question. Why is marketing crucial for construction firms?
Definitely. Along the same lines as Jen, I would also say it helps firms expand into new markets and also establish themselves if there's a certain area within construction that maybe they're an expert in specifically. Marketing can help showcase that work and help showcase their skills. And overall, marketing is essential for their overall growth to establish themselves as experts within that field. So being able to put that together and showcase that work is what can expand that growth.
Perfect. Dan, how important is brand identity for construction businesses? And if it's important, how does a company develop one?
I mean, that's a great question. I think in terms of really how we play into that, the construction market, we all know it's competitive. It's highly competitive. It's a crowded field. So, and really this kind of piggybacks on what Taylor and Jen just shared. You have to talk about what makes you unique, and that is your brand story, and that's going to provide you with a niche or an opportunity to for business or for recruitment or for growth or for however you are playing different in the market. So my suggestion in that sense is find those differentiating factors within your company and highlight them, because the big part of that also is the authenticity of it, right? If you're involved in a lot of coach speak and kind of general language when you're promoting yourself as a company, a lot of times that's hard. It's not necessarily something that will resonate with the audience. So if you are finding, actually, I'll give a perfect example. We had a client in Northern Virginia that brought us on set. There are various scenes that we were filming, and we incorporated the use of a robot, right? It was a $250,000 robot. It had 2 salaried employees following it around. And the capability of the robot was to take pictures on a construction site. So when you think about that in theory, that's a really expensive robotic employee for something that is doing something quite simple. But in capturing that, what that shows potential, new employees or clients, et cetera, is that this company is forward thinking and they are, utilizing technology and experimenting and kind of understanding that that's where they're putting skin in the game. And that resonated very well with the end user. And I think that's what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to find examples like that. And it doesn't have to be a $250,000 robot. It can be an employee that simply exemplifies who you are as a brand or company. Find those opportunities and showcase them and build that through media, and then send it out to the world or to the state or to the region. So I know I kind of did a big loop there, but that's how I would present that.
No, that's perfect. That's a perfect story. Jennifer, what are your thoughts on building a strong brand? Do you have any advice for construction firms?
Similar to what Dan said, give your brand a personality. So he used the coaching speak, or you had a term for it. And if you are too professional, too corporate, too Webster's dictionary definition of what you do, it's not going to resonate with people. They know the definition of what you're doing. You need to have some personality, and it doesn't mean you have to be a comedian or over the top, but little things that can kind of add a quirk to your business will go a long way. Some other things for branding from a visual perspective: try new colors, try new visuals that are a little bit different from what people are doing. Orange, yellow, red are all very, very common. Can you throw in a neon green or throw in teal or something that's not seen that often? And once you figure out what that look and feel is, put it on everything. There shouldn't be a piece of equipment on the job site that doesn't have your logo on it. So that way, any photo that someone takes of that job site, they're seeing your name. Put it on the PPE, put it on clothing, put it on vehicles. Make it so that you have a presence on that work site. And that can go a long way in just getting more people to know about you, especially on larger projects where there's a lot of subs and a lot of different trades on site. If your name is in front of everyone, that can lead to referrals. It can lead to conversations you may not be having otherwise, and that goes a long way. Another piece of it, try to do strategic sponsorships that get you in front of the right people. I see a lot of companies that are sponsoring events that don't really target a potential customer, don't target potential employees. Maybe it's giving back because the VP's niece is playing that sport. But if it's not getting you in front of the right people, then that's a missed brand opportunity for something else.
Right. Okay. Good points. Switching gears a little bit, Taylor, considering this industry traditionally relies on referrals and word of mouth, how can construction businesses effectively utilize digital marketing channels?
So digital marketing can open your doors to entirely new audiences. One example that comes to mind with a recent client we were working with is there's this misconception specifically with SEO that nobody's going to Google and searching to find the subcontractor they need and that who they should hire for a specific job. And so that they don't need to be publishing content in order to be getting leads and getting referrals through SEO. And so we were working with our client, Custom Park, who is a subcontractor within the commercial construction space. And we identified certain keywords and search terms that were relevant to their industry, and then created gated content around those keywords. And because of creating these opportunities that weren't initially there without the use of digital marketing, they were able to reach new potential clients and expand their market beyond just in Baltimore. So now they're across the country, and they were introduced to these new clients specifically because of the work that was done through search.
Interesting. Dan, what do you think? How construction companies effectively utilize digital marketing channels?
I love this question because I think it's, it can play in any industry. And what I try to do when I have this conversation with potential clients is ask them to apply the cheat code. Digital marketing can be a really overwhelming thing to, to understand, or to understand how it works or provides an ROI, et cetera. So what I would suggest doing is, if you're a company that is engaging or looking to enhance your digital marketing channels, et cetera, look in your periphery, find other companies that are having success with their digital marketing channels, and share that example with a marketing firm or a production company and say, I want my brand to look and feel like this, with the understanding that your brand is always going to look and feel like you. It's just going to have that aura of something that resonates with you. So apply that cheat code. If you are sitting in a certain sector business and you want to grow, look at the companies that are, in the growth area that you want to belong to, and see how they're doing it. And it also does something else. It'll give you the opportunity to find out what they are spending on their digital marketing and production needs. And then, so you know what your competition is spending. And then it also gives you an idea of what your budget should be or what it could be. So it's simply kind of doing the research in a way that feels right for you, because there are so many different ways to market yourself and present yourself. So find something that feels authentic and create that map, and then take it to somebody who can build that map out for you. That's what I would recommend.
That's a really interesting perspective. I'm going to have to start using that, a cheat code. That's really neat. I like that. Jennifer, tell us some of the common hurdles your clients in the construction industry face, and what solutions maybe do you have to offer?
Sure. So common hurdles are sourcing good content. I can't tell you how many blurry photos, thumbs in the frame, people like just looking horrible. I've gotten photos of people texting while driving equipment, and I'm like, guys, I can't use this one. Look, like that's not going to be okay. Or other safety violations that aren't as egregious, but also things you don't want to show in your marketing. Maybe it's someone wasn't wearing gloves, or the hard hat, it wasn't being worn properly, or little things like that. So sourcing good content is a very common problem. One solution to that, usually there's someone on a job site that doesn't mind taking photos, or you can line up a day where someone like myself or one of the marketing folks can go on the job site and get the photos. And if they're trained to know what to look for, they can, hey, put on your hard hat. Hey, make sure you have gloves. Let's pull that wire that shouldn't be hanging from the ceiling over to the side so it doesn't ruin our frame. Little things like that. The other hurdle is just prioritizing marketing over other deadlines and internal problems. Getting the CEO to sign off on something, or getting a VP to sign off on something when there's a crisis at a job site or a deadline is coming up can be very, very challenging. So for that, you just have to plan ahead, plan for there to be delays, plan for there to be obstacles. And in a perfect world, you get done really early and everyone's happy. But in a realistic world, you get done on time. And the more you can just accept that that is a reality and build it into your plan, that can help. The other piece of it, and this is something I do for a lot of clients, is getting to find someone that knows your business well enough, they can build a story between the lines. So when I get content from someone, a lot of times it's like 6 bullet points. They use abbreviations, they use shorthand. There's definitely not enough of a story from that alone, but I have enough of a relationship with my clients that I kind of know what they were saying or what we want to say. It's going back to that brand message and that overarching story. How can I tie this piece of it? So they told me what equipment they used on the job site. I can do the research of why is that equipment significant? Why does that make a difference? And then elaborate on it for them so that it's less burden on the team that's doing the work.
Great, wonderful. Dan, tell us about some of the common challenges that your clients face and what you do to try and solve those for them.
Well, I just want to point out that I think, Jen, you brought up so many great points about problem solving in the moment when your clients are busy and are, marketing may be the last thing on their mind as they're trying to create their, complete their job as a production supervisor or, a superintendent or whatever it may be. But they know they need to get Jen this material. So they're going to send it and they're going to abbreviate it, but it's in her. And then she can take that and dissect it. I think part of what we do as a company is in terms of handling common challenges is really specific to the client, right? And just to give you examples, we'll sit down with a client at the beginning of the year and just client X, and they'll say, we need 4 feature videos to be done to cover recruitment, safety, et cetera, over the year, right? And within that, they also have 6 opportunities to film those scattered throughout the year. And they basically put that on their plate and say, create a map and make it work. So we're problem solving that and saying, okay, perfect. And then we come back to them with a plan. And within that plan, it makes their life a lot easier because they don't have to think about how to map it all together. We'll suggest, filming multiple opportunities on one site or covering multiple stories in this way or that. And what that does is just take that off of the director of marketing or the CMO's plate. And I think that is how we solve that. The most common challenge we get from a director of marketing is, hey, we have X number of assets that we need to complete over this time period. And here are opportunities to shoot it, make it work for me. And that's something we love. It's a fun problem to solve because we have so much experience with it. So yeah, at the end of the day, the challenges are just problem solving for people. It's not a specific recruitment niche or because everybody's challenges are markedly different. Literally with every single one of our AAC clients, their challenges are different. So it's just being a problem solver for them. Yeah, hopefully that's not too vague, but.
No, and actually I was going to ask you a follow-up question on that. Do you have any tips for capturing content like Jen did?
I mean, as you were sharing all of that stuff with the wire hanging and we're used to the hard hat life. Our team understands we have to show up and, in steel-toed boots and make sure we have our glasses and all the proper PPE. But this goes back to what we originally talked about, or the first question I answered. When it comes to creating content in the construction world, what seems to resonate the most is the actual is just the authenticity of the story. And nothing has to be perfect. It doesn't have to be polished. It just has to be real. And so a lot of times you have to know your client or your partner well enough to unearth those stories when they don't have the time to do so. Again, piggybacking on what Jen said. So creating content and that's actually the challenge of not to really toot our horn here, but when you're hiring somebody for a one-off opportunity and then doing it again 6 months later, you have to reteach that firm or that company your processes, your plan, what your brand, your messaging. And the idea here for us and what we try to do with clients is just learn them and learn their processes and what they love. So we can do the work for them in terms of creating their story. Because we're not subject matter experts in construction. We're a production company. But what we do understand is how to learn our clients and then evoke the most out of them to have us tell us why they do what they do great. And it's fun. So yeah.
Yeah, pulling those authentic stories out. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Taylor, how do you approach targeting and reaching potential new clients in this industry?
Reaching new clients starts with understanding who they are and who makes the decision, and then what are they trying to solve. So identifying those key personas, such as, are they the property managers, the developers, the project owner, no matter who it is, first identifying who they are and then tailoring the messaging to those specific people and the specific problem they're trying to solve, and building a strategy around those pain points, their priorities, and their specific decision-making process. So that's our main approach. And then from there, using the analytics to then tailor that strategy as we move forward.
Do you use networking in trying to acquire and approach new potential clients?
Definitely. I would say networking is a big thing, both connecting with people and then engaging with specific groups as well. So connecting with people on LinkedIn and other networking platforms as well that you want to do business with, or you may have met at an event that you want to be connected with. And then also engaging in posts and groups that you feel connect well. Is a good way to just be involved in any industry that you feel is a good fit. So both for us reaching potential clients, and then also when working with clients and suggesting ways for them to reach their potential clients.
Right. Dan, how do you approach reaching new clients? How important is networking to this relationship building activity?
I mean, networking is everything for me and for my company. I think it's all like, I don't know if you can tell this or not, like I live for relationships, the right ones, right? And what I mean by that is finding people that I can have a conversation with about their kids, their life, their whatever. And as a result of getting to know them and learn them as human beings, you by default want to find out how to help them. And that doesn't mean it's direct, right? So when I go to a BCNE event and I'm having a great conversation with somebody, there's a really good chance that I'm not ever going to do direct business with them. It never matters. It doesn't. Because in that opportunity, I'm creating a real relationship, and then it's like the referral game, which is just so fun. There's nothing more gratifying for me than going to an event and having a conversation with somebody and being like, oh my gosh, I have to connect you with that person. I mean, the first time I walked in, and to share more about BCE, the first time I went to a networking event for contracting, it was with BCE. And the first person I talked to was John Gregg. And that conversation was just, we ended up talking about our kids for like 30 minutes. And that may seem like, man, I'm going to an event and why do I want to talk about that? And I think to each their own. But for me, it was just like, that's the environment I want to be in. Because even as a vendor coming into a construction space, nobody wants to be pitched video production. That's not why we're there. But we are there to have genuine conversations, which create connections. And I think, in my humble opinion, BCNE does that as well as anyone. So there's my big plug for you guys. But I really mean that. I love the environment. So networking is huge. Obviously, we're a production company, so we can create a lot of assets. But it's funny because we tell our story by what we create for others, we don't create anything for ourselves. So that might be counterintuitive, this conversation, but because we're always filming, we can handle that. But yeah.
Jennifer and Taylor, could you share some of your best networking tips?
Sure. So one of the ones I have, don't try to meet everyone in the room, because if you leave with 15 cards, then you have 15 people you're supposed to follow up with, and not all of them are going to be worth your time. So if you already know a couple people in the room, ask them who they think you should talk to, and kind of focus on 2 to 3 people that you want to meet and get to know while you're there. And if you can leave with 2 to 3 really good contacts, that's a success for going to an event in person. But getting those introductions or starting there is a great place to be. And usually that can lead to like, oh, and you should meet my friend, this person that you didn't even know was going to be there. So I like that approach a lot.
Taylor, how about you?
My tip would be, once you've been to the event, whether it's in person or online, the connections that you've made, the follow-up is really what is going to establish that connection. So people are meeting lots of people and making many connections, but if you're able to follow up promptly and then from there continue the follow-up, continuing that connection and building upon that is what's going to continue that relationship moving forward.
Agreed. I also think that make time for people. So like after you do what Taylor's talking about, right? Like you follow up, like make time for them, try to meet them in person.
Yes.
I think that there's this is going to sound so stupid, but there's like an energy connection when you're sitting in front of somebody and having a real conversation that is different. It's not that virtual isn't effective. Virtual is the world we live in. But take the time to take that 30 minutes to have a coffee or tea or a beer or whatever it is, and kind of extend yourselves, because I think I've had so much more success in business and in my life by doing that than through just utilizing email or just utilizing LinkedIn. I think you got to like get to the next layer, and that will really show you where your circle is and who you resonate with and who's going to go to battle for you, even if they don't have any skin in the game with you.
Another
That's good.
follow-up, and I don't always have the discipline to do this, but I intend to, is when you schedule that event on your calendar, block off time the next day or the day after to follow up with people. Put that commitment on your calendar at the same time you're putting the event on your calendar. And that forces you to go through those business cards, do the follow-up, connect on LinkedIn, call them if you really need to follow up with them about something specific, and not let it like go multiple weeks before you follow up.
I love that tip. I'm going to start using that. I'm going to schedule my follow-up time. That's perfect, Jen. Thank you. Well, let's get to, we actually got a question in our chat here. So let's talk about resources and costs for all this. Jennifer, what creative ways have you found to stretch a limited marketing budget for those in the construction industry?
So all I deal with are limited marketing budgets. It's just a fact of life. Even my biggest client, we are nickel and diming every expense. So some of the things, if you can collaborate with vendors or strategic partners, so maybe that's sourcing content, using them to help increase your reach, or splitting costs, that can be one really good way. And some examples of that could be a chimney company that does liners partnering with an HVAC company that doesn't offer that service, or other trades that complement each other, working together. Maybe it's a masonry company partnering with a siding home exteriors company, and you can kind of work off each other's skill sets to offer a collaborative thing. And that could be splitting an event at a booth at a trade show, or maybe you both sponsor an ad and you get a cheaper ad placement because you're both on the piece. Depends on what that relationship looks like. Another thing you can do is work with those partners to draft content. So if I use the liner example with HVAC and chimney companies, maybe you could write one blog that both of you post and you link to each other, and it helps each other from an SEO perspective. It also helps position you as an expert for an audience you may not normally be reaching. Engage your workforce would be another one. So if there is someone on the team that likes taking photos, maybe they're not a good writer, but they're good at sourcing photos. Just send them over, dump all that content onto me, and I'll figure out what we can use and what we can't use and how to position it. But let those people that are interested in doing it, do it. Don't hold them back. Just give them the right channels to get it done. If you can ask your clients for testimonials or content, that can also be helpful. So I have a stone client, and trying to capture stone once it's installed on the building is next to impossible, because we never know when the stone is going up. We know that the stone was shipped to the job site, but is it getting installed this week? Is it getting installed 5 weeks from now? Will the things around it be done enough that it's a good quality photo? We have no idea. So we try to get to know who the entire team on the project is, who was the mason installing, who's the general contractor, who's the architect overseeing things, and reaching out to them at an appropriate timeline to say, do you have photos? Do you have content? Can we get more information? I'll also stalk them on social, because sometimes they post things that are great for us, but we wouldn't have known about it if we weren't proactively kind of monitoring what was going on. Next is repurposing content into multiple things. So I mentioned like that blog that could be used in multiple ways, but can you write that blog so it's also your next email blast? It's multiple social media posts. it turns into a project overview, like 1-page summary. So you're doing the work of getting the content once, but using it in as many ways as possible. Another piece, I have a couple more. Host educational events and webinars. So if you can get in front of the right audience, that's a great way to do it. Architects host lunch and learns on different topics. Maybe a supplier would let you come in and talk to their audience and get you in front of people. Another thing you can do is kind of cut the crap. So there's probably something in your marketing budget you shouldn't be doing. I mentioned sponsoring the VP's niece's cheerleading tournament earlier. How else could that money be used or reallocated? The next one, and this requires like being proactive, find awards, even if they're not huge awards, but getting awards builds credibility, it builds brand awareness. They're usually relatively inexpensive to enter, but you have to be paying attention and enter like 3 months before the award or 6 months before the award. So you have to kind of like be proactive, but if you can find those things, that can go a really long way on a limited budget.
Those are some really good ideas. Thank you. Dan, do you have any ideas on how to prioritize a marketing budget and kind of make sure you're hitting the right things?
So great question. In production, we're kind of always the last leg of it, right? So like you have your marketing budget. Within your marketing budget, you need to create assets to support what you're marketing. And so a lot of times the clients will come to us and say, I know I need to build media. I don't know if I have a budget for it. What is it going to take? And my response to that normally is, and what I try to get this conversation out of the way right away, not for the benefit of us, but really for the benefit of the client. In your mind, or based on what you've done previously, what have you allocated towards, production or assets or building assets? And, that can be over a year, over a quarter, over a month. It could be a one-time thing. And what we normally do with that number is take that and reverse engineer it and say, okay, with budget X, we can give you this number of assets over this period of time to constantly support your pipeline. And the budget, it doesn't matter what the budget is, it matters to you, but we can simply tell you what we can do, what the limitations are, and then some. And I always think that provides somebody with a really quick answer when they're trying to figure that out. Hey, I know I need this production. I need it this at this time, and this at this time, and this at this time. I don't know what my budget is for it. And so I ask them to just think really hardly. Even if you've never asked for video production before and you don't understand what it costs, in your mind, you probably have an idea of what you can spend in general. And we'll just take that number and figure out what is the best solution for you, or if we're the right partner, right? Because a lot of time that's been the scenario before where we've had a client talk to us and they tell us about a budget and what we can do for them, and we're simply not that right team, so we create a referral. So I think it's really important to establish that, and that's why I say apply the cheat code. We're going to go back to that conversation. Go find out what your competitors are spending and see if that makes sense for you, and then take that number and your big marketing budget and understand that some of that marketing is going to involve creating media. A lot of times you can use cell phone footage. A lot of times you don't want to use it. A lot of times you can incorporate both. So like you need some stuff that shines and you need some stuff that's raw, and talk to a production company about how they can help with some or all of it. So yeah.
Just to build on something you just said, do you have any advice on doing that research on your competitors, that financial cost research, other than maybe taking that map you want to replicate, right, and bringing it to somebody such as yourself? How can people do research to figure that out?
So I think that's a great question. I think if you have company X that you love their media profile, how they utilize their channels, what their brand messaging look like, and you have a relationship there, or you simply reach out to the director of marketing. I mean, that might seem a little crass, but like people are willing to share this stuff and say, who do you guys use? Who's your marketing team? Who is your, and if they have an internal one, who's your production team? Because we have some pretty large clients in the ad space and in the construction space, and most of them don't have internal production because there's no reason to pay for that on a yearly basis to salary employees when you only need fractional development. So they normally outsource it. So you call them and you ask them, who do you use? And you don't need to ask how much they spend, because that might be too intimate of a question. But if you can ask who they use, you can normally figure out what that is once you talk to that company, because then you know they use marketing team Y. You reach out to marketing team Y, you have a discovery call, you kind of get all the information you need. And that's a really direct way to find out what your map is. And what we have found is most people are willing to provide those answers.
Neat. Thank you. Taylor, how can construction businesses measure the return on investment or their ROI of their marketing efforts? If we're talking about spending and prioritizing our budgets, how do we figure out what we're doing right or wrong, especially considering the longer sales cycles that we have in this industry?
Definitely. Considering the longer sales cycles and just ROI in general, we would recommend, instead of looking specifically at a certain quarter or this year, instead maybe take last month and compare it to last month in the year prior. This will give you a direct comparison, but in a time frame that makes more sense with those longer sales cycles. And will also account for things like seasonality and those longer sales cycles, like I said. And what you have to do as well when you're comparing those are being able to take into account external factors as well. So that can be the economy or changes in the industry. So being able to understand what are the factors that are impacting the ROI, both from the company's internal perspective, and then what are the factors from the overall external economy as well.
Great, thank you. Jennifer, how do you measure your success of your marketing campaigns when dealing with these long-term construction projects?
A lot of beating up sales managers and project managers to enter data into a CRM. 9 times out of 10, that's where things get lost and we lose some of the tracking and reporting that we would like to have. Is they put in the lead, but they didn't put the lead source, or there's just not enough notes in the system for us to see where that relationship originated and how it started. So having SOPs and working with the team to use a CRM effectively is huge. Another thing we do is set up some scoring within the CRM. So when you're adding a lead, how good of a lead is it? Because that's data we can get sooner in the sales process rather than waiting 12 to 18 months for the job to close and a decision to be made. All right, we got 6 leads off of Google last month. How good are they? Like, do they have the right budget? Do they have the right, like, are they in the right phase of the buying decision process, or are they just kicking tires? And if you can kind of evaluate that on a couple different metrics or parameters, that'll help you see what's working and what's not working faster. It is a gut check rather than like true data, but there's a lot of information that can come out of that. And sometimes tweaking that website form or tweaking some of the content sooner as you start to pick up on good and bad things that are working, you can drive better results in the future without waiting a year to see how performance is going. Another piece is automating wherever possible. So depending on what your marketing mix is, can you have phone number tracking and have automated, like, where are the calls coming from? Is this a call from the print ad that we ran? Is this a call from business cards in our brochure? Is this a call from the website or Google ads that we're running? Like, track those phone calls to see where your calls are coming from. Don't just use the main line. That's a relatively cheap way to see how things are going. You can also use UTM codes and some other digital tracking to see where things are coming from, but make sure it goes all the way to your CRM or all the way to your tracking tool so that you have valuable data on the other side. Another piece, I work very closely with sales teams. So if we're nurturing a lead, and a lot of companies, it's the project manager that's overseeing the sales process. So they're managing projects while also trying to follow up on leads and nurture relationships. So I'll be in the CRM and kind of see like, oh, this lead needs some nurturing. They need a touch point. How can we send them something? And what does that look like? So a lot of times we're creating content as we go to help the sales team have better resources specific to what they're doing. It's kind of an account-based marketing model. which is fun in my world because it means I can never predict what I'm doing 2 months from now, because there'll be some project. It's like, oh, drop everything. We're pitching this thing today, but it works. So you've got to be able to be flexible. Another thing, if you can know your customer lifetime value, that goes a really long way in justifying expenses. So if you know once you land this one client, they're likely to be repeat business and get you so many deals, you can justify spending more to go after that one piece of business, because in the long run, it's going to be worth it. You're not just evaluating based off of each individual job.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna turn to the Q&A right now. And actually, Dan, this goes to something that you touched on a little bit. How long does it take for information on a website to get old or stale? How often should we be adding new content or refreshing the whole thing?
Well, I think I'll answer my part in that. I think it's understood that consistency is key in anything that you do, whether it doesn't really, that can apply to anything in life. It's no different with content. Content, you can create that evergreen kind of grandiose piece that shares the messaging of your company. You shouldn't be reinventing that all the time. Otherwise, you're reinventing your messaging. But what you can do is create micro content and other opportunities to share stories that you should constantly be refreshing. And one of the reasons we have to do this is we'll work with clients, and quite frankly, the turnover is high, right? So, hey, we created this video, we have this opportunity, but certain people or aren't wearing safety gear or no longer work here. How do we mitigate that issue? And you're doing that either by refreshing your content or by working with a company that can say, perfect, we built that for you. We can replace that scene and keep that piece as something you invested in with a quick edit. So I think you always like messaging. They say it's like 5, 6, or 7 times that you see something before you build trust, comfort, etc. in it. That can go to any specific subject you're talking about within the genre of work that you're in. So consistency is hyper important, but it doesn't have to be like insanely expensive, right? That's where you sit down with the team and come up with a plan, right? If we're creating a 2 to 3 minute piece about safety, what can we do within that 2 to 3 minute piece to create shorter pieces to populate the rest of the month or the year? You can be that effective with your content if you actually have a plan and you're intentional about who you invite to film, etc. Because, I'll give you an example. If we're filming a safety piece and we're talking to a board member for the company, and then we are talking to a client who, understands these safety practices, and then an end user who now is at the facility or, rents the space, have 3 different touch points to create individual testimonials while filming that feature piece, right? And from there, that's how you have to get creative in thinking about content. And if you're paying a production company to come out and shoot that stuff in all its glory, ask them for everything. Because the back end, you may have some higher editing fees based on how much you need cut up, but you're being super efficient with your cost strategy and also getting as much content as you can. So it's just a good way to look at it.
To piggyback on that,
yeah,
when it comes to website content, there's no tried and true formula of like after 1 year it's dead.
Right.
I have seen pages from 10 years ago that still are top performers, and pages that barely last 2 weeks being of interest in getting any traffic on a site. So some of it's just looking at your analytics of what's working and what's not working. And I think as digital marketing has evolved, there's less of we need to replace our entire website every 3 to 5 years, and more refreshing sections, refreshing individual pages on a constant, consistent basis. There's no more set it and forget it. You've got to be looking at, hey, this page gets a lot of traffic. How can we squeeze more juice out of that page? Or this page really isn't doing what we wanted it to do. Can we tweak it, evolve it, do something to make it more valuable? Because no matter what you think, users are going to do what they're going to do. So a good example, like I know there's photos that go around of college campuses where they build the sidewalks and they expect students to walk a certain way, but there's this dirt path of just where everyone has cut across and done the thing they want to do. That's how people are going to use your website. So you can have all the planning in the world of how you think someone's going to do things, but what gives you the best data is looking at the analytics and seeing, hey, our team page, almost all of my clients, their team page gets a ton of traffic. How can we do something more there and get more value out of that when they're coming to this page? Or what do we know about the users that are going to that page or is going to other pages? And how can we use that to our advantage?
Right, that's a good point. Taylor, do you have any tips on how to stay fresh in your website?
Definitely. I think a point that both Jen and Dan touched on is establishing that cadence. So it's not a set amount of time that it's once you post something and it's been this amount of time and it's been on your website, then that content is no longer relevant or it's no longer going to drive traffic. But if you establish a cadence of every certain amount of time you are publishing those blog posts, going in, updating that content, and then also from there going in, looking in your search console, Google Analytics. So being able to see what pages are driving traffic, if those are the right pages, being able to optimize them. If there's any pages that should be driving traffic and they're not, going in and optimizing those as well. But then spending time to go into each aspect of your site. So ensuring that you have that blog content, the pages that are going to drive the search traffic, updating content such as the video content, images. So there's many aspects we look at websites like living, breathing entities. So dedicating the proper time to take care of them and update them accordingly.
Great, thank you. The next question we got, it was directed at Daniel, but let's everybody can certainly weigh in. Does Daniel have advice on when to use cell phone footage versus professionally produced video? Let's go to you, Dan, and then we'll do a round robin.
That's a great question. A lot of that depends on the medium where it's displayed, right? There are certain social mediums that you use where the expectation is that you're using cell phone footage. And if you're using something hyper polished, it probably won't even fit the algorithm that it sits on. So I think you just have to understand where it's going and why you're using it. The biggest thing I can ever share with content is always understand the intention of what you're creating. Because if you know the intention of what you're filming, photographing, whatever, you're going to understand how to create it and why it needs to look that way. So if you want to, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be here any longer, but if you want a TikTok presence, what does a TikTok profile of a contracting company look like? And then there you understand the intention of how you're building that content versus a web reel on a website, which is this cinematic, grandiose thing that has to be shot in 6K and has to show all these buildings and all of their glory because people go on that website and they're like, I trust this brand. That's what their stuff look like. It sounds stupid, but most people spend 7 seconds on a website. So that stuff should look great. If you're telling your brand story, you probably don't want to do that on a cell phone. But if you are telling a day in the life of an employee, what an amazing way to do that, right? You can follow somebody and see it, you could even do that with a production company just from an editing intention, but you almost want that to be raw because you want people to feel like you're in their shoes, right? This is what I do every day. It's what it looks like when I go on site, when I sit at my desk, etc. So as long as you understand the intention of what you're creating, or you can at least find that, that should kind of answer your question. But just check the social mediums too. They'll give you that answer right away.
I think it's
Jumping
also
off
what's
of
the
that.
intent. So the day in the life, if you want it to be authentic, that cell phone shaky cam type of angle is going to be more realistic.
Yeah.
A GoPro strapped to their chest as they're doing things, something along those lines
Exactly.
is more realistic and more authentic storytelling. Whereas if it's your sponsor reel that plays before a large banquet hall, like that needs to be polished. That needs to look professional. It needs to showcase your company in a established way, and you're not going to get that with cell phone footage.
Keeping the
Taylor,
audience and the viewer in mind. So just knowing if someone's viewing this on TikTok, they're much more accepting of something that's going to be on the phone, it's not going to be completely polished. It's not going to be that same quality as the 6K video that's shot with a production company like Dan. But then you're not trying to get the same outcome as something that is the same video or a different video that you're taking the time to create the storyboard, go on site, do the full production, but that video is going to go to a different audience, have a different outcome. So thinking who's the audience, what's the intended outcome for this video often will help determine what's the proper allocated budget and resources behind that video.
Great.
Another piece of it, and Dan could probably speak to this more, is the audio quality. So
Right.
you can capture good video quality from a cell phone if the lighting is decent, and that's not to downplay what Dan does, but like
Oh, you're
lighting's not the hardest part. But if you're trying to get good audio, going back to my Stone client, they tried to send me photos during an install and there's hammering and it's just so freaking noisy. I have to turn it up so high to hear what the guy's trying to say, but then the background noise is so distracting, like you can't use it. It's utterly useless, but it's an interview of a guy talking. I can't put a voiceover over it. I can't, like, it looks stupid if you just have like subtitles and music playing. So that becomes a challenge too, and that could be a big differentiator of how you're sourcing your content.
I'm gonna nerd out for 1 second here, even though I'm not in the actual production of these. You're right. Lighting, it goes to intention, right? Why are we filming this? If you are, I'll just relate it to food photography, or even like when you're walking in to see a building in all of its glory. Lighting is probably the most important thing and the biggest skill set of a production company, besides all the equipment that it uses. Understanding how to modify and manipulate a room and a space for it to look a certain way. If you ever want to geek out on lighting stuff, just type that in on YouTube. It's really fun to watch how things are actually brought to life. The reality of it is those are very few and far between that you need to hyper focus on something like that. To Jen's point, if you're out on site and you want to hear somebody talking about a day on the job, but there's a jackhammer going on in the background, we're not lighting that scenario, even if we're using 6K cameras to do it, right? You don't need to. Natural daylight is what it should look like. But if they don't have a lav or a boom mic over them, or you understand how to control the audio situation by saying, hey, either stop that for a second or let's go somewhere else, those things are tough to recover. And AI can do some incredible manipulation in terms of sound recovery, but you want to be cognizant of it if you are at a gala and you're sharing this piece, and that distraction in the background takes everybody away from why it should be what it is. So it's a great point.
Right. Our next question here, do you all have any different advice if the goal of marketing is recruiting new employees instead of new work? And I'll turn this to Jen first, and then we'll go around and get everybody's thoughts.
So I have a client where almost everything is recruiting, not new work. So we're not using a CRM to track jobs and bids. We're using different tools to track job applications and what's the quality of those job applications. What are the different channels we're using to drive applications and kind of tracking that. So it's almost kind of like e-commerce marketing in a way of like, how do we get them to go to the site and apply now and get their information? And how are we refining our targeting and how are we refining our messaging to make sure we're getting the right people? But the brand story, the personality of what you're doing, the little nuances that make your company unique are huge for recruiting, because a lot of times the job offerings, the packages that people put together are relatively the same. We have health insurance, we have dental, we have vision, we have a 401k match. You get paid time off. Now there's rules that you have to post the salaries when you're promoting jobs, which helps a little bit for the applicant when they're deciding where to apply and where not to apply. But you're not gonna, you've got to do that personality and the branding to differentiate yourself. You also have people doing research of like, is this the company I want to work for? And they're going to social media, they're going to your blog, they're going to your videos to see who is this company. Maybe you're on your second interview and you're kind of like, all right, is this company who they seem to say they are? How can I like, how do I feel about them? Who do I know that is connected to them? And how can I do more research? So making sure that presence is good is really critical. Some pieces I do for my recruiting clients and initiatives, like, can you get your employees to go post reviews about what it's like working at the company on Glassdoor and some other sites, and make it so if someone searches like X company reviews, they're seeing this company took care of me. This company, I had a personal emergency and they made sure my job was waiting for me when I got back. This job made sure I had training to advance my career. This job made sure I had um, all the things that make a job worth waking up for. And especially in construction, we're asking people to be on the job site at 6 a.m. and not leave till 7 p.m. and repeat the next day. It's got to be a place worth working for, and you have to tell that story.
Sounds like that authenticity message that you were talking about before really comes through here as well. Taylor, do you have any advice around this?
Sure. So at the beginning, we were talking about when you're establishing your brand presence online and throughout your digital platforms, that it's an opportunity to establish yourself and your expertise within your field. But further than that, if one of your goals is recruiting, it's also a time to establish yourself in terms of what does your company do differently. So what's your culture? What are your values? What are the aspects of your company that if a potential employee goes and sees your platforms and your digital presence, what are the aspects of your brand that you want that person to see? And then from there, making sure they have the relevant information to then become and apply and become a potential applicant. But ensuring that that information is relevant across all your social media and digital platforms. So leveraging social media, being able, like we talked about, day in the life videos, showcasing employees, what they're doing, how they're liking the environment that you provide, and crafting messages and content that resonate with that audience.
Great. Dan, what do you think?
I'll try to keep this quick, but I think within creating recruiting opportunities and differentiating yourself as a company and all those things that are hyper important, and when you're looking for that authentic story, or when you want to showcase it, don't be afraid of who you're willing to throw on camera. A lot of people are like, oh, that person wouldn't be good on camera, and or I'd be super uncomfortable. If people are talking about what they do great, even if it seems like they wouldn't be the perfect person, that will hyper resonate over somebody that can say something in the best way humanly possible. But you're looking at that person and I'm like, I know you don't do any of that. So like, I can't overemphasize that. Show the people who are doing the work well, or doing the trade well, or talking to the people. It doesn't matter what it is. You can find those people, that's who you should attach yourself to as you're creating content, because those are the people you want to hire, right? So when somebody sees that, they say, that's me, and I feel comfortable in that role, and that's the type of environment they provide. So that's where I want to be. And then that person realistically is probably going to be a great fit for your company. So find those stories of what makes your company what it is. Not even necessarily.
And those can be the hardest ones to find.
Yeah.
Because it's the day-to-day things that your employees overlook as something unique and special. But from a marketing perspective, it's like, oh, I definitely want to like post about that. That's fantastic. And sometimes it's little things like there was a job site and there was a little boy at the house next door that was just watching the crews work every single day and was like enamored with it. One of the employees put a sticker on like a little plastic hard hat and gave him a safety vest and like made him a crew member. Great content for social. Everyone ate it up, but I would have never known about that if it wasn't like a passing conversation that happened. And that's, if you highlight those employees and you reward them for like looking out for the greater good, that makes a big difference.
That's a perfect example of where you should find. But to your point also, Jen, a lot of times companies aren't big enough for their, that has to come from potentially the people who built it. And so how do you get away from the coach speak? Sometimes you have to break the walls down of the people who built the company to say, tell me the real shit. I want to know why this company is successful and why you care so much about it. And those are the people that want to come work for that person. So sometimes it has to be from the top. That's where you have to look. You just got to they have to get out of their comfort zone, not even necessarily their comfort zone, but to share what the actual values are outside of the structure of what is corporate storytelling. So And we have a hospital client that has to share, and we've gone through a number of creative sessions with her where she gives us all the points about why her organization is so great. And we had to schedule a 2-day session with her to just stop talking about that and start talking about why she's doing what she's doing. And it worked. And it created this. And then everybody within her organization found a different way to attach themselves to her, because they were so used to her just speaking in rhetoric and saying the same thing over and over. They were like, oh my God, this is why I'm working here. This is why I connect with you. So sometimes it takes time, and you can't be afraid of that. And that investment in itself is worth it. So.
Great. Thank you so much. That is all of our Q&A questions. I do have one more question, but I'm not sure how we're doing on time. Donna and Elizabeth, should I keep going?
Yeah, I think we do still have some people online, which is great. So maybe one last question and then we can wrap up. That would be great.
Good. I saved the perfect one for last then. This is a question for all, but I will go round robin. Jen, I'll start with you. As technology continues to evolve, what emerging trends do you see shaping the future of marketing in the construction industry?
Sure. So in a practical sense, artificial intelligence, it's going to make marketing efforts more personalized. We're going to have better analytical insights. And I'm preface that with like, when you know how to use it, you'll get better analytical insights. If you just go straight to AI and like, tell me what I need to know, it's not going to paint you the whole picture. There's going to be more automation because we're going to have less staff and more demands on a regular basis. I think the software and the tools that the construction industry has are going to get better and going to improve. That a lot of them are kind of crap right now. So I think we're going to see that become a better user experience for everyone within the organization. And then one of the ones that just I geek out on is virtual reality and augmented reality, of how you can help clients visualize a project sooner in the process. Put on VR goggles and walk through your kitchen renovation and kind of see like, this drawer is fantastic. I love the way that this fits, or like, this just doesn't feel right. We need to tweak something here. And that stuff is going to be really cool and could really apply to any industry. Plumbing, if you could like make yourself the size of a mouse and walk through the lines to see like where things are, you're going to be able to plan things in a much different way. So that I personally geek out on that possibility.
That would be cool if we could walk through the
It's coming.
the size of a mouse. That would be neat. Taylor, what do you think? What emerging trends do you think we're going to see shaping the future of marketing in the construction industry?
As Jen said, I think AI will continue to evolve and play a big role within marketing, both the way we predict trends and then analyze data, optimize targeting. I would agree with what Jen said. You're able to use AI to optimize what you're currently doing, but it does take that level of using it to gain insight, but then taking that insight to actually take it a step further. So things like implementing those targeted campaigns and creating those optimized targets from there. AI will play a role in it, but there will still be many hands-on aspects to marketing within the near future. It will just be able to help us with more of that, helping with the predictions and the data analytics aspect of breaking down those aspects of the industry. But I would agree with Jen with that.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I'll touch base on this as it relates to me in terms of what we do. First of all, you have to embrace technology. You have to embrace AI, and you have to utilize it because it's going to be here whether you want it to be or not. But in terms of how it works for like a marketing director and talking to a production company, right? You can say, hey Dan, we want to tell this story about these 3 clients. Here's the information we know on them. Put that into the system, utilize it. You can literally create your own script, and then yes, it is going to be basic. It's not going to get the details right, which are hyper important, but you can hand that off to a production company and say, I like the way this looks and feels. Now, and then we would say, well, here's how we can actually shoot it. because AI is still a program that's utilizing data, so it doesn't understand lighting or construct or how you're filming, but it is a great map for you to get your point across. When you're talking to a production company, you're like, I don't have any idea how to tell you what I want, but I know I want it to look like this. You can use that technology to assist, which is hyper important. But I'll leave it with this. The whole world of automation and AI and all of those things are inevitable. I think eventually people are going to be dying to connect with human creation, human communication more than they ever have before. So don't lose that in the process. Continue to tell the stories of the human beings. And I'm not saying this for production, just in general. Like human connectivity will be hyper important in the next 5 to 10 years as everything and every system and everything we do becomes more automated. So yeah, just hold on to that. That's going to be your differentiating factor, is going to be your people. It is going to be their creative ideas, because everything else you can type into a computer and it's going to figure it out just the same as it did for anyone else. So even though you're able to prompt and create unique opportunities with AI, don't lose that aspect of it. But yes, embrace technology. Sorry, done rant.
That's okay. It sounds like the running theme from this morning is the authenticity piece. Is don't lose track of that authenticity as long as you're sticking with this high-end technology. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. It was great. I mean, I feel like we could talk about this forever, right? I mean, this stuff is exactly, I mean, it's right up my alley. I love it. But I do have to make a couple quick comments. So Jen, thank you for talking about how important awards are. And so this is the little plug for BC's Craftsmanship Awards. I mean, we're accepting applications beginning in January, but it is really important. It is a very inexpensive way for you to showcase what your company does. And particularly the last couple of years, we've really enhanced what we do even for nominees. So it's not just for members. And so I encourage people to take photos and to take good photos. And if you have to get somebody professional on site to take photos of end products, do that, because it really does help. And also taking before photos is important, because it really tells the story of how something has evolved. And so that really helps, like, our judges when they're looking to see how a craftsman has enhanced a particular space. So that's the little plug for BC&E's Craftsmanship Award. So Jen, it was perfect when you said that. And then my other plug is about BCE's Exchange newsletter. We are always looking for subject matter experts for stories that we're doing. And it's a great way for our members to get their name out there. And so if we're doing a story on a particular trend, and we know that 3 or 4 different members have worked on a project that fits in that trend, we will call them and say, let's talk about the project. And then they're in our story. And sometimes it's really hard to get people to call us back, and because maybe they're busy, or maybe
shockingly hard to get people to call you back.
Yeah,
I want to promote you. I want your
yeah. That is one of our jobs as BCE, as an association, is to help promote our members, right? So sometimes it's hard. And if you look at our stories, you'll see we do contact some of the same people, because there are people that are marketing savvy and they know that getting their name out there is going to help. And so that's sometimes a really big hurdle that we have, because sometimes we have really great stories and then we can't get our members to tell us about what they did, on a particular project. So that's another shout out that a plug that I'm constantly doing. We've been doing this for years, and our stories are really good. Pat us on the back on that one. Our stories are good, but we need those subject matter experts to make it even better. And so it's doesn't cost anything. And then we push it out on social media. We push it out on email. And so the companies are out there constantly being promoted. And I think that that's an important point to make too, because it doesn't cost them anything at that point, other than their association membership, because we do only go to our members for our sources for our stories. So that's important too. There is that benefit of being a BCE member. So that was my little rant there, but excellent conversation. We appreciate all four of you taking out the time to talk to us today and give us your expertise and some really great tips. So thank you. You also talked about networking and how important it is. So it's really just a perfect segue into our next networking event is on December 4th. It is our holiday party, one of our biggest events of the year, and that is at Citron at 5 o'clock. So it starts at 5. So we hope that everyone can attend that event. It'll be our last event of the year. So again, thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our panelists and to Emily for moderating. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Donna. Thanks,
Thank
Emily.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.